You may have seen the 2011 movie Machine Gun Preacher. That movie is about a real guy. His name is Sam Childers. And we had a fantastic conversation here on the Manlihood Mancast. And we're going to hear about how his life was radically changed and how he helps children all over the world, especially Africa, right after this.
Are you in need of marketing help for your business or nonprofit? Do you have a company or organization that is thinking about hiring an in-house staff person to do your marketing, but realizing it's out of the budget to bring on someone with the right skills and experience?
If you need an expert to help you with any of the following: social media, graphic design, website design, web hosting, public relations, video production, podcast editing, short form video editing, email marketing, search engine optimization, content marketing, grant writing.
Grand River Agency is here to help you amplify your message and get it in front of the right people. Visit us on the web at grandriver.agency.
Men, nobody but you can lead your family and yourself to greater things. Nobody but you can carve your path. It's time to rise up and be a man. Welcome to the Manlihood Mancast with Josh Hatchman.
Sam, the Machine Gun Preacher, it is so great to have you here in my living room.
That's awesome, man. Good to be here. And one thing about being here with you, I'm still in Pennsylvania, and that's my home state.
I love it. Yeah, so you're from out Johnstown?
Somerset County. We're literally, my motorcycle shop is a mile down the road from Flight 93.
Okay.
So everybody should know where I live easily. Flight 93.
Yeah, so Pennsylvania's a great state, man.
Yeah, awesome. I was born in North Dakota, raised in Pennsylvania in the mountains, raised up on groundhog, eating squirrel and rabbits and, wild turkey. A life that I wouldn't exchange for anything else.
Yeah, same here, man. We grew up eating lots of speed beef, we call it.
And
which could refer to illegally gotten deer or deer gotten on the side of the road.
We just had yesterday at my bike shop when I'm in. I have several restaurants, so I love to cook, and so I cook every day lunch. So I just made a hind quarter and a slow cooker all night long. Made it into like pulled pork, but pulled deer meat barbecue, and I mean everybody was just blown away. Yeah, good.
Yeah, man, I love it. We still eat quite a bit of that. I went hunting for the first time this year since I was a kid. Didn't see anything, but I had a buddy who hooked me up. So
yeah, there you go, man.
Same guy brought me some moose too.
Yeah,
no, it was not local moose.
My dad was part Cherokee Indian, and he never was into hunting very much. He only hunted because of us boys. There were three of us. But every time we needed meat, my dad thought unemployment was welfare. So my dad didn't believe in welfare or any assistance from the government. So we knew when times were rough because he'd say, I'm going hunting. And he'd always get a deer. But he showed us boys what signs to look for. And if you sit there where those signs are long enough, you'll get deer. And all three of us boys ended up being pretty good hunters over the years.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had horrible eyesight and then got cataracts, had my eyes fixed. I can see. So
wow.
I can see. It's time to go on. So I'm enjoying it. I'm hoping next year, this coming year, I can pull something out of the woods. But
good.
But it's fun just to be out there.
Yeah.
We'll live. I think this is the best part of the country.
Yeah.
I could have packed up and moved away.
There's only one other place better, and that's where I live in Somerset County. No, but if you love the rural areas of Pennsylvania, you would love where I live in Africa. Our farm is just amazing. There's no power. You hear the cars go by here. You might hear a tractor now and then, but it's in the middle of the bush. There's no power. It's all solar. I mean, it's just unbelievable. The only problems we have is elephants. The elephants want to get into some of the trees, the fruit trees, you know. But if you like it to be secluded, you'd love our farm.
Yeah, I want to come visit now. That'd be awesome.
So yeah, it's funny you say the only problem is the elephant.
Yeah.
That doesn't even sound like a problem. So yeah, I've been to Africa myself. I was in West Africa, in the middle of Conakry, Guinea, which is nothing like that. It was definitely, you know, people on top of people.
Right.
We were there working with some refugees from Sierra Leone.
Yep.
We had, after the war there,
Yep.
they went up and moved to Guinea.
I believe they still have some conflicts going on
Yeah.
in that area.
Well, in that section of West Africa between, you know, the Ivory Coast all the way up to Senegal.
Yes.
One of them, somebody is constantly overthrowing president.
Yeah.
So, but that's
I done a Zoom the other night with a guy from a college, and our newsletter inside of December of last year, we said in the newsletter, I called it Wars and Rumors of Wars. And I knew there was 30 some conflicts going on in the world. And he Googled it while we were speaking on this Zoom. Well, I say Zoom, but I think it was like a podcast also. And I'm not very good technology-wise, you know. But there's 34, he said, going on in the world today. 34 major wars going on. And many of them are in Africa, and we don't hear nothing about it. Ethiopia is in a major conflict right now, northern Ethiopia. South Sudan has been more than 50 years in a major conflict. Now there's a peace treaty there now, a ceasefire peace treaty, but they're still fighting. People are still being killed. Congo, there's several conflicts going on in the Congo. So it's a shame, because the thing that gets me the most is when you mention war, what comes after war is the word children, because children are always involved in a war.
Yeah. And that kind of gets me to part of your story, and we'll probably tell it out of order.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Talking about Africa right now. So let's talk about that. So you are just being in Africa and what you're doing right now related to war. Like, there's a reason we call you the machine gun preacher.
You know, I went to Africa about 27, 28 years ago. I've been supporting Africa for 29 years. But what happened when I gave my life to the Lord, I had a minister prophesied that I was going to Africa. I got angry. I mean, fighting angry. And I went home that night and I cried because I knew my calling was in Africa. So I started putting money in Africa. I've always been a good businessman. So I had a construction company at the time. So I started putting money into Africa, and a couple of years went by, and I in my mind, I said, you know what? I'm going to put thousands in Africa. So there was a time I wrote out a check, and I'm talking 27, 28 years ago, for $20,000. That's a lot of money nowadays. I wrote it out, and I went home that night, and I literally stood on my veranda, my porch, looked up in the air, beautiful summer night, and I said, God, see there? Wouldn't you rather have my money? And it was almost like he sat next to me on the porch, and he said, no, I need you. So a few months went by, and I figured it out. I'm going to fool God. You know, I believe every Christian, especially a seasoned Christians, we always think we got it figured out, that we're going to fool God. So God's going to like what we're doing. So I said, I'm going to go on a mission trip. 5-week mission trip into South Sudan, northern Uganda. And when I got in there, I got in the middle of a conflict war. It was the Joseph Kony War. And I heard these soldiers talking about, the soldiers at the compound I was staying at, talking about a village that got raided. And I said, you know what? I'd like to go see this. And they said, fam, it's very dangerous. Are you sure? And I said, no, listen, I'll pay you. I need to go see this village. So the village was about 6 to 8 hours after it was raided. And when we got there, they said, look, there still could be problems in the area. Here, we'll give you a gun. So these were SPLA, which at the time they were rebels, but they were good rebels. You know, the SPLA in South Sudan, you had the good rebels and the bad rebels. So we started looking for children because they said we're probably going to find children hiding out here in the bush. And in the movie, if you've seen the movie Machine Gun Preacher, there's one place where a young kid was running and he stepped on a landmine, killed him. Didn't happen like that. I found the body of a small child that day. That was about 6 to 8 hours after the village was raided and bombed and everything. And the child stepped on a mine, and from the waist down was gone. And I remember I stood over that body and I said, God, I'll do whatever it takes to help these people. For the first 10 years I was in Africa, I didn't realize what I meant until now. Going on 29 years later, supporting Africa, living in Africa. My wife is African, dual citizen now. I know what I meant that day was I'll be there the rest of my life. Yep.
So how are you making a difference now? So you out there, that.
You know, the work has got major. I always tell people, and this is something you got to remember. The word says God will not give you any more than you can handle. Now, a lot of times when I preach that or quote that scripture, I get a few religious people come up to me and they'll say, well, that scripture don't really mean that. What are you talking about? And all through the Bible tells us in many places, God will not give you any more than you can handle. Our work started out very small. Our first feeding program started out over a decade ago with 20 children. Now we feed over 10,000 meals a day. We started out with one orphanage. Now there's 5 projects. We have children in foster homes. We started out with a farm almost 10 years ago. 9 years ago, we started farming with 200 acres. Now the farm is over 1,200 acres. You know, so we're not only into rescuing children in the war zone. You can get on to Google and find out that I'm 61. I'm one of the oldest Americans to still serve actively in a war zone, rescuing children. I still do that. But I believe, and please, anyone that hears me, don't get upset when I say this. I believe that if you're just going to go to Africa and just teach the gospel of Jesus Christ, stay home. Because Africans know how to pray. They know the gospel of Jesus Christ. They know where their Bible is. Most Christians, we don't even know where our Bible is. You know, so my thing is, I believe if you're going to go to Africa, Jesus Christ should be first. But secondly, you need to do something to change the nation, the community, the district you're in. That's creating jobs. So we started a number of years ago creating jobs. This is something that will blow you away, okay, what I'm going to tell you. Right now, we work over 700 people on a payroll. That's how many jobs we have created. But if you speak to the president, you speak to the people from the president's office in Uganda, in East Africa, they're going to tell you, yes, this man, Machine Gun Preacher, this man, Sam Childers, has made a difference. When you create jobs, you remember, Jesus Christ is first in my life. But creating jobs is what we're all about.
I actually say that kind of thing a lot here, like in our community. There's a lot of poverty.
Yeah,
I saw it when we drove.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that there's a lot of people who try to meet that need.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is that need is never met.
Yeah.
It just keeps going. And I know from working with some Africans as well, you can send them money.
Yep.
And that money, you can say, I'm going to send you money to buy, I want you to buy chickens so that they can lay eggs.
Yep.
And then you have eggs that you can sell at the market. They'll buy the meat chickens, they'll eat up the meat chickens, and then they don't have it.
Absolutely.
Yep. And it's just because of poverty.
Yeah.
So the idea of teaching people to, here's how you can create a sustainable lifestyle.
Well, how did America get to where we was 20 years ago? We got there through people creating jobs and hardworking people. Now, starting 20 years ago, the system has come in. Everyone depends on the government instead of working hard. I was raised up in a family, work hard. God will supply all your needs. And I don't like to sound, like a religious person, because I'm not a religious person. But, there's a lot of different names for God. And one of those names is jealous. The God that we serve is a jealous God. And what do I mean by that? When we go to the government for assistance, before we go to him on our knees and pleading and praying and crying out to God, I need your help. I need your guidance. I need your assistance. God gets jealous. And all of a sudden, we're getting help from the government instead of going to God. And see, our country was founded on "In God We Trust." I don't want to talk on the welfare system now, but I remember my dad would be over 100 years old now if he was alive. My dad always said the welfare system was made for the hardworking man that got into trouble. But now it's turned into reality. Family after family after family is on the system.
Yeah, I think the system is and then, somebody who at one point of his life needed some help, the hardworking man, some help. I know that system is designed to keep you in it. It's hard to get out.
And now it's hard. Now it's hard for the low income man to get a little bit of help because they say, well, you're just right over the budget. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a mess. It really is. But, I think that the ideal situation is, not to get too political, but the ideal situation is little government as possible and as much people doing their business with each other.
Absolutely.
I think that's
absolutely.
Because I don't care who you are.
Well, that's
you've got something you can do that's going to pay you money for.
That's what we teach in Africa. Like our farm that we have, all the commercial farmers in northern Uganda used to come to my farm. Or I shouldn't say my farm, the organization's farm. And the first thing they'd say, they'd get out of their trucks and they'd look around and they'd say, what kind of fertilizer are you using? I'm not a farmer. Okay? I don't even look like a farmer. I'm a biker. I've been a biker all my life, But see, God knows all things, And when we get the purpose in our mind that it's all about saving people's lives, God can turn you into a farmer. I didn't even know nothing about fertilizer. And some of the farmers were telling me years ago, they'd say, come on, Sam, we're supposed to share this with one another. How did your crops get so good, And it's a God thing. But the farm that we started out with, like I said, was 200 acres. Our farm is totally nonprofit. For the past 6 years, we give the main crop away. This past year, we gave away over 60 ton of rice, over 25 ton of maize, and butchered over 20 cows at Christmas and gave them away. And we do that every Christmas, December, we do that. And we don't give food like there's a lot of organizations, they'll say, we fed 50,000 people, today. No, we feed thousands of people, but not for 1 week, not for 2 weeks, not 1 month. We give 3 to 4 months ration of food. So that's what our farm is doing right now. This farm is amazing, and it creates jobs. It teaches people farming, ranching, and irrigation. Northern Uganda would be hard to teach someone there how to farm because they already know how to farm. But you know what they don't know? Structure. And what I mean by structure, you take 1 acre plot of ground. They'll plant like it's going all over. There's no structure. There's no straight lines. So when we go in and we begin to teach them, and if you want to teach someone, let them teach you also, because they want to know more of what you know, and you can learn something too. So we teach them how to put lines and step it off. They can grow 3 times the crop on 1 acre once we teach them structure.
Yeah, that efficiency. And that's the big difference with what you can grow. Yeah, and there's all kinds of methods of gardening and farming and doing that.
Yeah.
And I know that, Africa has very lush soil too. So it's kind of like, it's crazy because that poverty mindset, which is in Africa, also here, like, you don't realize what you actually have.
Yeah.
You can actually do with what you have. I feel like that's, if they knew what they could do with their land,
Yeah.
it would be a completely different.
I tell you what I love about Africa, and I believe it's because they don't know no better. Like in America, it doesn't matter if you're rich, middle class, or poor. So many people are still unhappy. And because no matter who you are, if you're poor, you want what other people have, and you can't have it because you don't want to do what they do. If you're middle class, you can't get out of the rut, so you're unhappy. And if you're rich, you're unhappy because everybody wants what you got and you don't want to give it away. But in Africa, people can live in a mud hut with a grass roof and no toilet in their house, no running water, but they come out with a big smile on their face and they're happy. And I mean, it would be hard for me to come back and live in America because I would miss that happiness and that where you meet poor people and they're pleased, You meet people in the bush, it has 10 acres of ground and they're waiting and praying for their next crop to survive, but they're so happy.
And willing to share with you.
Absolutely.
Like honored to feed you a chicken.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So let's hit rewind on your story a little bit. So anybody that hasn't seen the movie Machine Gun Preacher should probably watch it. Obviously, it's a fictional movie. But let's look at
Some people say the movie Machine Gun Preacher reminds them as a Clint Eastwood movie. It never dies. The original Machine Gun Preacher movie now is going on 12 years old. And you'll be sitting down watching DSTV, cable TV, and all of a sudden it comes back on again. It's like a Clint Eastwood movie. It don't go away. There was a lot of things in the movie that was not true. The violent part was not even close to how bad it was. But the things that weren't true was I never got so down that I was going to commit suicide. That was not true. I never shot anybody point blank. That was not true. I never relapsed. It showed me I was a heroin addict at one time. I was a drug dealer at one time. I never relapsed. When I quit, I was done. So there were so many things in the movie like that was not true. But what they didn't really show was how bad the children and the people were really suffering. And it was all coming. See, at the time, President Bashir was the president of Northern Sudan. They didn't want to say nothing about him. At the time, they had genocide charges on him. Now he's out of office. President Bashir is now in prison. Now, he hasn't been sentenced or anything yet. But so when they done the movie, everybody was afraid to tell the truth. But the problem was the president of Northern Sudan that committed genocide, that was still trying to kill people, arming the little rebel groups like Joseph Kony, the man that I fought personally, was being armed by President Bashir. So none of that was showed in the movie.
Yeah, the politics of it wasn't
right.
Yeah. So let's rewind even further back to your life. You talked a little bit about growing up. You had a dad who taught you, work hard.
Yeah.
where did you, let's talk about that journey of how you became the person.
If you read my first book's titled Another Man's War. And in the book, I talk about why I had to call it that name. Was our dad raised 3 boys, and our dad was the kind of guy that if he ever heard of you bullying somebody in school, you were going to get a good old-fashioned whooping when you got home. But if my dad would hear that you allowed somebody else to be bullied in school, you were going to get that same old-fashioned whooping when you got home. So all my life growing up, I remember one time I got into a fight in school, and there was like 3 kids, and I kind of went off on them, beat them up pretty bad. And this is like in 7th, 8th grade in school. And they called my dad down to school, and my dad asked me what happened, because they wanted to send me away. They wanted to put me in a reform school and everything. My dad said, well, you're not going to do none of that. And he asked what happened. I told him the story. And he said, how many days you want to suspend him? And they said, how many days? And then my dad said, okay, he'll be at home doing his chores, his homework. But he patted me on the back and he said, good job, son. Because my dad taught all of us, never walk away from someone in need. And it was like every fight I got into was always somebody else's war, So that's why my first book, which was a number 1 seller, sold over 800,000 copies. I don't have I get rights or I get the dividends or whatever you call it, royalties from it. But the book sold over 800,000 copies, still a big seller. And the title is Another Man's War. And so I gotta give my dad, my mom, all of my success growing up and still being in business. My faith, I got to give all that to my mom. My mom was, she was the kind of woman that if you needed prayer, you wanted my mom to pray for you. And her last couple of years that she lived, she got Alzheimer's really bad, and she could never recognize me and my brothers as old men. She only remembered us as her little boys. And every time you'd go to the home up until when she died, we'd say, how's mom doing? They'd say, she's still trying to get everybody saved in here. So she never forgot her 3 boys and never forgot her Jesus Christ. So that's where my upbringing came from. Hardworking dad and a mom that knew how to pray.
That's awesome. And then somewhere you took a left turn from that and God brought you back. So
when I was very young, and it's something because you told me some questions you were going to ask me at the end. And when I was up to 10 years old, from 3 years old to 10 years old, if you was to say, Sam, what are you going to be when you grow up? I'd have told you I'm going to be a preacher one day. And it was prophesied over my mom when she conceived me, prophesied over my mom when I was in her belly. And then at 11 years old, I started smoking marijuana. I started watching all the kids in school that I thought was popular. And see, there's something about us, even to this day, no matter who we are, no matter how old we are, from a kid to an old person, we all want to fit in. Because why? When we fit into a group or a clique, whatever you want to call it, we feel loved. So at 11 years old, I seen all these older kids that I thought was cool, and I wanted to fit in. So I started doing what they were doing. So I started smoking cigarettes, started smoking marijuana. 12 years old, eating pills, going to booze parties. 13 years old, eating acid. 14, snorting cocaine. All of a sudden, I become the most popular kid in school because I knew all the older people, the Vietnam vets and everything. I knew them all, and I'd get drugs from them. And then all of a sudden, I find myself at 15 years old getting up one morning putting a needle in my arm, shooting up heroin and cocaine. So what happened? From 10 years old, I want to be a preacher, and 15 years old, I'm a heroin addict. So I moved out of my home at 15 years old. By the time I was 16, I moved to Orlando, Florida, from Central City, Pennsylvania, to Grand Rapids, Minnesota, to Orlando, Florida. And I was running with bikers at the time, and I started selling drugs. And it went from a little bit of drugs to thousands of dollars worth of drugs. And there was a time in my life when I was in my late teens, I thought I had everything I needed. I knew Jesus Christ was real. Never doubted Jesus Christ. I just thought I got everything I needed. I had money, I had guns, had women, motorcycles, cars. I had it all. Yeah, so I was getting through life good. And then I got into a bar fight in Altamont Springs, Longwood area in Florida, outside of Orlando. Got into a bar fight, and it was a bad bar fight. I mean, people were shot, people were stabbed. I was in the back of the bar. There was only one way out, the front door. And as I was trying to get out, people were laying on the floor, shot, stabbed. I mean, bleeding, hollering and screaming and pleading for help. And that evening, I said, if I make it to that door, I'm done. Now, a lot of times Christians think that that's when I gave my life to the Lord. No, it wasn't. That's when I made up my mind. See, the message that I have for the church, stop telling addicts to come down to the church. Jesus can take it from you. He could do that, but he does not do magic acts, okay? We got to stop treating him like a genie in a bottle, that he's going to do some kind of magic act, hocus pocus, and take the addiction from us. He doesn't do that. He could, but he doesn't. So what I did is I made up my mind, I'm done living this life. I made it to that door, I'm done. I moved away, left all my friends. It was 2 years later that my wife got me to walk into a church. And when I walked into the church that night, I knew it was my night. So 2 years after I made up my mind, no more drugs, no more alcohol, no more criminal activity. I'm done. 2 years later, I said, Lord, here I am. So the people out there that hear this, that has addiction, I want to tell you something. When you're at your lowest is when you can become powerful and make up your own mind and say, I'm done. But you have to leave all your old friends. You got to leave all your old relatives. Anyone that does any kind of activity with drugs and alcohol, you got to leave them all. I speak in a lot of rehabs around the world, and I always tell people there's a 5-year grace. You can't help nobody till you make it 5 years. For me, I was so bad off. It was 10 years. People in the biker world, clubs that I rode with, they thought I was dead. They thought somebody killed me and buried me in the woods. They literally thought Sam Childers was dead, because when I left them, I left them. But now I'm still a member of a 1% group. I can go to the clubhouse. I can pray for people. I can be an asset to them. I can be around someone snorting cocaine. I can be around someone doing drugs. And people say, well, Christians shouldn't be there. That's where Jesus won us. If you're able to be there and not bring a reproach upon the gospel of Jesus Christ.
And it shouldn't be right away. Like, you couldn't have done that.
I said, no way, man. It took me 10 years of getting my life stable before I could go back there.
I think it's awesome that you do, though.
Yeah.
So at our church, we had a lot of guys and gals coming from the rehab, and a lot of addicts and people who were, some of them, coming to church, tripping out.
Yeah.
And it's funny though, there are people who are like, well, I think this is the church for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great.
You got to find one you fit in.
Great. But I'm going to tell you what, this is where we're at, is we're going to love people for who they are,
Right.
where they're at, in the mess they're in.
Well, to get into a church where we mess up is once we change our life, we want to go to mom and dad's church or maybe grandma's church. There's nowhere in Scripture it says we're to go to grandma's church. You got to find a church that you fit into, that you can be a part of, or that can be a problem to help us to fall again.
Right. But, the most important part of it is making sure the most important part of what church is you're having a relationship with God and you're having a relationship with other people.
Right.
And that's how we grow.
Yeah.
So, Sam, you say that you made up your mind that day, and it was, 2 years later before you walked into a church?
Yeah, 2 years later I walked in.
When you made up your mind, is that the end of it, or did it take that 2 years?
No, I want to tell you something, man. It was like, at the time that I walked into that church, I may have had a drink now and then. I would smoke a little bit of marijuana now and then. But that night when I walked in, I said I was done. Now, to start with, I want to say this. I don't have a problem with somebody having a drink, okay? Because I always tell people, if alcohol has you, then stay away from it. So I don't have a problem with that. But my problem was cocaine and heroin. But I still would smoke a little bit of weed, but I wasn't that criminal guy. I wasn't that guy walking around looking for a fight anymore. But that day that I walked into the church and I said, Lord, here I am. It was all finished. 10 years. Finished. Not even having a sip of beer with your pizza. 10 years. I was finished. And it took 10 years to get me to be the man that I am today. I don't believe that I could have ever been the machine gun preacher if I wouldn't have been clean for 10 years. A lot of people that know me personally and know my motorcycle shop, what I have in Africa, the security company I have, a lot of people say, oh, I want what you got. And I always tell them, are you sure? Are you sure? Because if you got to go through what I went through and the commitments and the goals that I set in my life to get to where I'm at, it took a lifetime. I'm 61. It took a lifetime to get me here. But when I walked into that church, June of 1992, it was over. I haven't tampered one time with drugs of any kind. From marijuana, nowadays they say it's recreation, not for me, okay? I haven't tampered with any hard drugs of any kind or even marijuana since June of 1992.
So you got clean, got your life right with God, and then some preacher told you you're going to Africa.
Yeah.
And then you went to Africa.
Yeah.
Now, were you right when you went over?
I went into the war zone, South Sudan. I went on a 5-week mission trip into South Sudan with a guy from South Africa that was building a compound to raise chaplains, and I went straight in with him. But my heart was not for what he was doing. My heart, the whole time in 5 weeks, when I would see a child dead or killed or fresh grave of a child or a child hurting, my heart would just flutter and beat. And I knew for me was children. So the second time I went to Africa, I went with the same ministry. And I told him then, I said, I won't be back. I said, I'll be back in Africa, but I won't be back to your ministry. And I went straight into the war on my third trip in. And I didn't know where I was going. I went straight into the war. I ended up buying, I think it was like 20-some acres of ground. Then I bought more later, connecting. Our orphanage in South Sudan is 43 acres. And that orphanage, when we started it, till now, more than 25 years, it's been existing. It's one of the oldest orphanages in South Sudan, and it's the only orphanage in South Sudan that was never abandoned, not even one day during the war. The movie showed the orphanage getting burnt to the ground. Totally not true. The truth is the rebels attacked it 3 times with RPG, 30 cal machine guns. They could never penetrate through a bamboo fence. That's not man, that's God. So the orphanage is still there. I mean, I'm still running the orphanage. It's not the biggest in South Sudan, but it's one of the biggest, but it is the oldest. Our registration of our orphanage is 06. And everybody else, all the projects there now, they're way up into thousands. But we are one of the first to register and the longest to still be there.
So when you go in now into these war zones, I mean, we call you the machine gun preacher. I mean, you're going in armed. Are you going in doing a lot of fighting? Are you going in and like, what does it look like?
Okay, to start with, when I'm in anywhere in Uganda on the border of Congo or the borders of South Sudan, I own and operate with my wife a security company in East Africa. So we are a registered company. We're not a crazy guy with a gun. We are a registered security company. In third world countries, most third world countries, if you are a security man, you're just like a police officer. The only thing is when you arrest someone, you have so many hours to get them to a real police station. So we have the same rights and we can do the same actions in a third world country as a policeman or a military man. So, like if they do evictions or anything like eviction, you have to have a security officer do that. That's who we are. So many years ago when the war was going on and I first went in, I was just a preacher helping the good rebels. But now I own a security company for going on 16, 18 years now. And so when I'm in any of them areas, I am armed. We're not there with a mission to fight. We're there with a mission to rescue children. Our mission statement is 2 words: serve and protect. That's our mission statement. 2 words. The N is the N sign, but serve and protect. That's what we do in East Africa. So right now, as I said earlier, I'm one of the oldest men in America. I'm 61 years old, one of the oldest men to still be active in a war zone. Now, I mean, we got our American military, we got some older men in there that are legends, okay? I'm not like them. I'm not a legend. But what I am is I'm still active in a war zone. That means I suit up in a uniform and I go in armed in a war zone rescuing children. A lot of the war area we go into on the front lines, the military are fighting on the front lines, and as fast as they get children in their hands, they turn them over to us. So we have several projects that we take them to, like the Congo rescues. Those children you cannot put into an orphanage because of what they have done and what they're made to do. So those children, you have to deprogram those children. So we begin to deprogram those children in an area that I don't talk about, but we own the whole little town. It's a school, it's a marketplace, dormitories. We take those children there and we begin slowly deprogramming them with the Word of God and the love of Jesus Christ.
So how do those kids get in? Because we're talking about kids that have been conscripted, right?
Yeah.
Fight. What is that?
You know, most of those children are taught how to fight, especially in the Coney War, through intimidation. What they'll make them do is maybe kill their mother, kill their father or brother or sister. And people will say, well, how can that make them fight? Because their mindset, they're a child, maybe 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. They feel, I just killed my mother. There's nothing more I can do worse than that. So they already feel they have crossed the line. So they'll just do whatever they have to do. So those are most child soldiers are forced to kill through intimidation. So you have to slowly deprogram those children. The biggest thing you have to do, and a lot of people don't realize this, your average child soldier is 9 to 11. 9 to 11 years old. So you have to deprogram them. How? Through Jesus Christ, with the love of Jesus Christ, but you have to bring them back to being a child again. So before they can be deprogrammed, they have to feel in their heart, hey, I'm only 10. I done that stuff because somebody forced me to do it, So it can be a difficult situation. It's something that you have to be called by God to do for sure.
I imagine you've got a good team there.
Right now, this will kind of shock you because I am I don't like to say an ex-addict, but I was a heroin addict. I have no education. I speak around the world on business now, speak in universities around the world, but I don't even have a high school diploma. But I work right now over 700 people on a payroll. We have a commercial farm. We own hotels. We own a supermarket, American-style truck stop with self-fuel, have auto mechanics, paint shop, a hardware shop, or a supermarket, 2 restaurants. I had 3. I've sold 1. So we have all these businesses teaching young people a skill and a trade. So we not only raise these children up as small children to go back to their families, we give them the opportunity to learn a skill and a trade on our projects and then go out into the world on their own.
It's awesome. Yeah, that's something that, like I said, when we talk about when I was in West Africa, there's a whole story, how we ended up connecting with these refugees there and went and helped them. But I actually have a tape that I recorded when I was there. I sat down and I recorded interviews with the people and the things that they saw.
Right.
And my intention was I'm going to come home and I'm going to make a documentary out of this stuff. And I've never played the tape again because sitting there and recording it and listening to the things they've seen broke my heart so bad. I just recently was going through some old tapes and I found it. I'm like, I'm not ready to watch it. And it's been almost, 15 years more. It broke my heart. And so,
well, a lot of times people say to me after they hear a couple stories from me, they say, well, Sam, I don't even know how you can function in life. Most people that gets out of the service this day and time, young men, they're on disability, not because they were shot, because their mind was messed up. And I always tell people, well, you heard the stories and I put them in my book, but there's a lot up here you've never heard.
Right.
And those stories that's up here in my mind, most people couldn't handle those stories. And I speak a lot to like the military men that's dealing with anxiety and suicide and everything. A lot of them say, well, how could you have been through all this for more than 25 years and you still can function? You got to remember, I never went into the war without Jesus Christ. And I never went into the war on my own. So Jesus Christ took me into the war. So all the things that I had to do, I feel I done under the influence of Jesus Christ. So that's what makes me a lot different,
This is the Manlihood Mancast.
Are you in need of marketing help for your business or nonprofit? Do you have a company or organization that is thinking about hiring an in-house staff person to do your marketing, but realizing it's out of the budget to bring on someone with the right skills and experience?
If you need an expert to help you with any of the following: social media, graphic design, website design, web hosting, public relations, video production, podcast editing, short form video editing, email marketing, search engine optimization, content marketing, grant writing,
Grand River Agency is here to help you amplify your message and get it in front of the right people. Visit us on the web at grandriver.agency.
The things that you've accomplished are, I mean, in my mind, they're amazing. You know, like I said, I've been following your work since, you know, I remember seeing the story when it came out, you know, in the 90s.
Dateline NBC, they came in 2003, 2004. They came in and they done a story on Joseph Kony. Dateline did.
Yeah.
And Dateline wanted to hire the government to do their security in South Sudan. There was no government. Good rebels, bad rebels. And the good rebels said, look, we can't help you, but we know a preacher here that can. And they said, a preacher? And they said, yeah, Sam Childers. So Dateline NBC hired me and my group of soldiers to do security. So we're in South Sudan for 8-10 days. And the director said, are you the guy that everyone's calling Machine Gun Preacher? I said, yeah, but I don't like no one to know it, you know, because I was scared back then, you know. People hear a preacher with a gun. So they said, you mind if we do a little bit of story on you? So when the story come out, it's called Children of War, 2005, in northern Uganda. When you watch that story, it's 30 minutes on the man killing and kidnapping, Joseph Kony, and 30 minutes on the man they said was hunting him down, which I was never hunting him down. I was hunting the children to save them. So naturally, when LRA got in the way, there was a problem. So that's what kind of put the word out. When that came out, I had everyone calling my phone, coming to my house. People would fly into Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, rent a car, drive to my house. They wanted to do documentaries. So I called a preacher. I'm very successful. My success came from when God gives me an opportunity, I go to someone that's already made it and that's successful to get my advice. So I called a man by the name of Tim Bergen. At the time, he was VP of Cornerstone Television out of Pittsburgh. So I called Tim and I said, Tim, I need your help. He said, yeah, man, I seen you're on Dateline and blah, blah, blah. And I said, Tim, what should I do? And he said, what I would do is write a book. And if the book's any good, Hollywood's going to buy the book. Hollywood buys the book, do a documentary, write another book. And he said, you should be able to keep doing that channel after channel after channel. So that's what I did. My first book that came out was titled Another Man's War. Sold the rights to that book to Hollywood. Machine Gun Preacher came out starring Gerard Butler. The first documentary came out, Machine Gun Preacher Documentary. That's the name, and it's on Amazon, Amazon Prime, Hulu, and a few other ones out there. And then I wrote my second book, Living on the Edge. So I have a third book that's done. It's in editing right now in Germany. And so the third book will be coming out. The second documentary is being cut right now in Australia, and that's called Never Stop. And the third book is called The Most Unlikely. And then we are dealing right now with a second Hollywood movie. So the channel, that the advice of a guy that knew the industry, what he told me is exactly what happened over the 20 plus years.
That's awesome. What was it like, you know, the movie comes out, you know, did you get a lot of attention, you know, like on that?
Good and bad. Yeah, there was a lot of bad things happened. A lot of churches said they'd never let me in their church, and well, I didn't really feel bad over that because they don't want Jesus in their church. But I mean, there was a lot of good things happened, and there was a lot of bad things that happened. A lot of Christians believe you shouldn't arm yourself in any way, and I always say if somebody breaks into your house tonight and you hear them downstairs busting stuff up in your house, what do? You call the police. You call a man with a gun. Wouldn't it be awesome if you could call a man with a gun and he's born again to come to your house? Or would you want a man with a gun that's just a policeman that doesn't know Jesus, So those are some of the questions I would always ask. And I believe that if somebody's going to steal your child, you're going to do anything possible in your means to get your child back. And that's what I do. I rescue children, bottom line.
Yeah, so as a Christian, I often hear, or see portrayed Jesus as nonviolent, right? And I don't actually think that's true. I don't think he was a pacifist. I mean, he braided a whip and hit people with it to chase them out of the temple.
Well, and not only that, he just didn't braid that whip. He kind of sogged on it for 3 days. And I believe that's what he thought about what he was going to do. So it was premeditated, I believe the word is,
He also said, yes, he said, sell your cloak and buy, or he said, sell your sword and buy something. And then he said, actually sell your cloak and buy a sword.
Yep.
And did he, I don't think that he was, nonviolent. I think,
scholars, because I'm not a scholar of the word, but the scripture that you're talking is the first time Jesus sent his disciples out, he told them, I want you to go preach the gospel. Don't take an extra coat, extra pair of shoes, go. And then the second time he told them, take a money bag, take an extra coat. If you don't have a sword, sell your coat and buy one. Well, what did he mean? Now, this is not me. Scholars of the word meant that there will come a day that you will have to protect yourself or your family. As
someone else.
And the Bible tells us that we're worse than an infidel if you don't take care of your family. In Matthew chapter 5, he tells us, he made the statement, who is my family? And he made it anyone that believes in the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. That's my family. So he wasn't a man of violence. Now, we better not talk about his father, because we get into the Old Testament, we're talking about God, the Father, the Almighty King,
And you better not talk about the end of the book either, because or when Jesus comes back and he's literally wearing a robe.
And let's not get into the depths, because, I'm not a depth preacher. I preach Jesus, but depth preachers say that's why we have terrorists in the world today, is because when God gave the command to go into a town, a village, or a city and wipe them all out, they didn't do his command. Now that's why we have terrorists in the world. Like I said, I'm not a depth preacher, but get in there and study it. Yeah.
I grew up fighting quite a bit. I tell people, back in the 90s, things were different, the 80s and 90s. I had to fight like almost every day in school. And, I tell people I was gay bullied before being gay bullied was cool, and I wasn't even gay. It was just, so, you had this, you call you names and make fun of your mom, you ask somebody in the mouth, and that was the end of it, But, I think it's important for a man to be able to, I think it's something we need to be able to do, to be able to defend yourself, to defend your family and other people that need help.
Yeah. Well, I believe that as men, we have stepped down from what we truly should be as men. People say to me all the time, Sam, you have over 700 workers. You got all these businesses. How do you do them? You must have a lot of men, supporting you. And I say, heck no. I have women. Women run all my businesses. My wife is my main partner. She She does all the payroll. And they'd say, well, why do you have women? Because you can trust them. Men, we aren't who we need to be nowadays. You know, and I do a lot of men's conferences. I'm talking major 12,000, 14,000 men. I do major men conferences. And when they hear me preach, sometimes they start to get mad, but then they start weeping and crying because we know we aren't who we're to be. The women have stepped up and take the roles. You know, a lot of men say, well, a woman shouldn't be a pastor. Why aren't you pastoring? Somebody's got to step up and do it. The women stepped up to be Sunday school teachers, pastor. They stepped up to do everything we don't want to do, even down to fathering our own children. We can make them, but when it comes down to being a father, we don't want to be the father. Who's the father? The mother.
It's so true. Yeah. And now, my wife is a pastor.
Yep.
And it's not because the men didn't step up. It's because God called her to be that.
But, and there's nothing wrong with that.
But I will say, you know, I know that the men in our church also are preachers.
Yep.
You know, we have a lot of men who preach and lead and serve, and which is good. But I'm going to tell you, man, I've seen it so many times where men will abdicate their responsibility to lead and to to serve.
Yeah.
You know, and it's gotten worse today.
And some men will say, well, Jesus didn't call women to be pastors. Then why did he tell so many to go tell the people the good news?
The very first one.
Right.
The very first person that preached the resurrection.
Right. Right. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's, I try not to get too controversial because I know that we've got a lot of guys from a lot of different backgrounds. And I'm patient with someone who interprets the scripture in Timothy, right, that says that talks about, you know, women in ministry or the women, at least in the church that Paul was writing to. And I grew up an old-fashioned Baptist. So I understand why they interpret that scripture the way they do.
Yeah.
But I see things differently when I look at the whole of scripture. And I say that if it means what you say it means, that all these other scriptures that say these things have to be wrong.
Yeah.
So it can't be.
Well, what I tell men, stop reading it, stop quoting it, start being it.
Exactly.
You know, it's done. You know, this will sound bad, what I'm going to say. I don't like Bible studies.
No, it doesn't sound bad. I get you.
No, I don't like Bible studies. Bible studies turn into an argument. Everybody got their own opinion. Well, I believe it meant this. I believe it meant this. All I got to say is stop talking about it. Stop reading about it. Just end up living it. Yeah.
I fully agree with you there because, you know, knowledge puffs up. Now, people have spent a lot of time learning about theology.
Yeah.
And then they still treat their wife like crap.
Yeah.
They still aren't there for their kids and they still aren't doing the right thing. But they sure do know a lot about theology.
Right, right.
What good does that do you if you're not putting it in?
Well, I can say, and even in the movie Machine Gun Preacher, I definitely was not the dad I should have been. But my children never went without a home, never went without food, never went without electricity. They had all the things that they needed to function and go through life, and even a little more, you know. But as far as being a dad, I was the guy that was always out rescuing somebody else's kids. But my kids all turned out good. Yeah.
Are you close with them now?
Yeah, I mean, I see my daughter. I mean, naturally, God does not. So the religious people out there, I want to say this again. God does not like divorce. Me and my first wife did get divorced. You know, after I was in Africa for over a decade, she just woke up one morning and said, I want you to quit. You got a choice, quit or me. And, you know, I got on my knees. I cried, I wept and said, I can't quit. You know, I feel that Africa was my calling. If it wasn't my calling, I would have been dead. If it wasn't my calling, there wouldn't have been thousands of lives saved. There wouldn't have been movies, documentaries, and books, you know. So It was my calling. So I had a choice, and I'm not saying I did the right thing, please. So everyone out there, I'm not saying I did the right thing, but I never walked away from my calling. And I heard a minister once preach about walking away from your calling. And he identified it as even backsliding, walking away from God. So I never done that. My first wife had remarried a couple of years ago. She's doing good. I mean, she's happy. She's very blessed. And I remarried in 2018. I work right beside of my wife. My wife is African. We're not on one side of the room working together. We work beside each other. And, you know, and she
Gun preacher's wife, does she carry too?
Oh, yeah. My wife carries a gun.
She's better shot than you?
She's pretty good. And what's so strange with my wife, you're going to see her tonight. She's little and she's beautiful. And when you see her, she looks like this little petite little young girl. She's a lot older than she looks. And when she's in uniform and a gun on, she looks bad, okay? But the big thing is, you know, during COVID, we worked together. We were never apart for 9 months. Never had one harsh word. To this day, we don't argue. Now, most couples, when I say that, they're like, what? Now, how do you do that? This is my wife. I'm the butthead, okay? You can call me my nickname, Butthead, not Machine Gun Preacher. Nickname is called Butthead. So I'm the one that will say something ugly to my wife or get harsh. My wife will look at me and she'll just say, I'm sorry.
And then you feel bad because you know.
And then, right, then you're like, honey, I'm sorry. It's not you. It's me, you know. So either she's really good at women's psychology or it's just her custom. That's their custom in Africa.
I've actually heard from a few guys who have said, you know what? I'm tired of trying to find a woman here in America. And they will actually sign either go to Africa to meet in maybe somewhere for the love of their life.
Yes, yeah. Well, I tell you, me and my wife really work good together, and her life is children. She's a lot younger than me. Everything I do since I hit 55, I was planning to set the organization up. You know, Angels of East Africa, you'll also meet Evelina tonight. Evelina runs the office in Pennsylvania. Evelina's in her early 30s. Her husband is almost 40. They're preparing to take over Angels of East Africa. Either the moment I die or the moment I say, hey, I'm too old for this, you know. So they're in there, and my wife is in there for the long haul. And she knows her obligation when something happens to me, what she needs to keep doing, you know. So, and I started planning that at a young age, you know. I don't want what I gave my life up for to collapse or fall when I die. In so many ministries, that's what's happened. That happens because the man that founded the ministry wants to keep it in his hands and control it. So when it all stops and he dies, it all falls apart. So I can tell people out there, when you invest and you sow a seed into our ministry, it's a ministry that's going to be there till the trumpet sounds.
So that sounds like, yeah, I talked to, I have a bunch of old guys in my life, right? Like, you know, in there.
Well, I'm an old guy, so I know what you're saying.
Well, so my kids think I'm old, so, you know, but I've got a bunch of old guys in my life, and they talk about how when they were younger, you know, it was about taking care of the family. And when they were my age, you know, my youngest daughter is looking at an apartment today. She's getting married in June.
Wow.
You know, and so we're about to be empty nesters, and I have a grandpa. You know, I've got 3 beautiful grandkids. So my life now, and they warned me about this. I didn't get it. They said, you're about to enter the age of regret, which is where you feel bad about the thing you should have done better. And then it shifts and you're worried about your legacy. What happens after I'm gone? So it sounds to me like that's the stage that you're in. You're like, okay, I got to start preparing for what's on the other side of this, and what's going to happen to this after I'm done.
Yeah.
So the age of regret sucks, though.
I'm telling you.
I don't like this part.
I think with me is, my mind, I still think I'm like 35. And my body, I'm like 70. So that's the only problem I have, And I went to jump off my truck in Africa, and I fell to the ground and busted myself up, could barely move for 2 days. And my truck's only like 3 feet off the ground, I used to jump off of tractors and, big dump trucks. And, so you got to think, the older you get, when you hit that 60 mark, every move you make, you have to think about it.
Yeah, I can see that covered. I'm working hard on trying to get myself in shape because that's where I'm at.
Well, I think what I did is I worked too hard getting into the shape I am nowadays. Now I'm trying to lose some of the shape.
Because I want to try to make it clear that, when I get into my, 50s and 60s, it's not that far off, I still want to be able to move around.
Yeah. Well, I have a top of the line bulletproof vest, 30 caliper steel plates in it and everything. And I used to wear it in the battlefield, and I can't wear it no more. It's too heavy. It weighs 110 pounds without ammo, So I can't wear it. So I'm back to just going into the battlefield and just saying, God, it's up to you, because I can't carry all the stuff that I did. But I am going to, I'm 61 in 4 more years. When I hit 65, I would like to stop the field work. I'll be in our ministry till the day I die. I'm what they call a lifer, a missionary. So I'll be in ministry till the day that I die. But some of the field work, it'd be nice to quit at 65. And I had a guy tell me not long ago, he said, you got to remember there'll probably never be another machine gun preacher. So you might be saying that when you're 68, 69, maybe 70, Right.
So since we're talking about the battlefield again there, what are you seeing a lot of gunfights?
I run a security company in a third world country.
Right.
That's all. I don't like to talk about bad things. But I've been in 3 major gunfights in the last 3 years. So when you own and operate a security company in a third world country, you got to remember, we guard banks, we guard supermarkets, shopping malls, we run payroll, we guard gold, we guard people's homes, and at the same time, we're active in war zones, rescuing children, bring children out. So there's always a high risk of being shot at, I've been shot once and stabbed 3 times. And all in Pennsylvania. And that really shocks a lot of people when I tell them that. But no, I've never been shot in the battlefield. I've been shot at many times. And I got to give God all the credit, But yeah, it can be dangerous. But I believe that if we start thinking about a danger, like let's say you're driving into town, you see a house burning, and there's somebody in the window on the 2nd floor trying to get out. You have a choice. If you start thinking about the danger, you're going to watch that person burn alive. But if you act on what you know you need to do, you'll save a life. So I don't focus on the what if, and I don't focus on what can happen to me. What comes to your mind, if there comes a time that you got to save somebody in a car wreck, don't think about it. If you think about it, you'll be the one watching someone else be the one to save that life. And, my dad always said to me since I was a little kid, you're not thinking very straight, are you? And so maybe, here I am 61, still not thinking very straight. When I see someone in need, I try to act.
Makes sense. Sam, I like to ask all my guests a few questions. And I love the responses I get because it's pretty varied across the board. I'd love to hear your perspective on these. First question is this: what does it take to be a man?
Never give up. Have a lot of forgiveness. Don't try to hide your mistakes. Do your best to be what you know you should be. And I believe if you do that, you can be a man. And I think the biggest thing is you got to have forgiveness. If you don't have forgiveness, you don't have God. Because the Bible says if you have unforgiveness in your heart, He won't even hear your prayer. So the unforgiveness thing, if you want to be a real man, you have to have a heart of forgiveness.
So let's say that you can travel back in time and talk to 10-year-old Sam Childers.
Yeah. What do you want to tell him? You know, it's something you said that because earlier I told you a story about from the time I was 3 to 10, I'd have told you I'm going to be a preacher. And at 11 is when I walked away from all of it. The problem I would have is the 10-year-old Sam telling the 11-year-old Sam not to do this or that. He wouldn't have listened. You know, so I thank God for allowing me to go through what I did. Because if I wouldn't have went through that, I don't believe I could be saving lives to this day. So I had to go through what I did to save the lives that were saved.
Yeah. Yeah, you had to go through that brokenness to be the kind of person you needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the challenge, I think, whenever we look at that. What would you tell 10-year-old Josh or Sam or whatever, is that the trials are things that we've gone through.
Yeah.
Like, they have a big impact on how we help people today.
Right, right.
So. All right, my last question is, what is your best advice for the men that are listening to the podcast today?
Stop looking at your mistakes. Stop looking at who you once was. And if you've seen your mistakes, you already know what you should be doing. And so I think the biggest thing is you can be whatever you want to be, is what my grandma always said. You want to be a drug addict, you can be a drug addict. You want to be a criminal, you can be a criminal. You want to be a good father, you can be a good father. You want to be a good man that people will look up to. You can be that good man. I don't care if you live 50 years of your life being a butthead, criminal, whatever you want to call it. You can live the later years of your life being a legend if you're willing to walk with God. Very simple.
That's excellent advice, man. I really appreciate that. So let's say that our guys that are listening, they want to connect with you, they want to learn more about you and see the work you're doing, or maybe even
it's very easy to get a hold of me. And I mean, people literally call me and they say, wow, I didn't think I was going to get you. Okay, I have a bike shop in here in Pennsylvania, MGP Rat Bikes. You can Google that and you'll come right to it. You can call there, find out where I'm at around the world. If I'm in the United States, they'll give you a phone number that you can call me in the United States. If I'm in Africa, they'll give you an African number. They'll give you an email. I am not some person, some people say I'm a celebrity, a legend, whatever. I am not someone that you can't talk to. So you can talk to me. It's very easy to get a hold of me. You want to go on a mission trip to Africa, very easy to go. You want to come when I'm around here in the States, I'm usually around my bike shop during the week, Monday through Thursday, you can come to the bike shop and sit down and eat lunch with me, you know. So it's easy to get a hold of me. And listen, don't get upset with my advice because, you know, everybody says, well, I got an addiction. You don't understand. Don't say that to me. I had that same addiction, cocaine and heroin. And see, I was not the guy out there robbing, stealing, scrounging around to get the drugs. I was the guy selling you the drugs, okay? So I had the worst addiction. You got to make up your mind, you're done. And I want to tell you something, you can do it. If Sam Childers did it, you can do it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your taking the time to talk to me and looking forward to hearing you talk tonight at the church.
It'll be good. God bless.
Are you in need of marketing help for your business or nonprofit? Do you have a company or organization that is thinking about hiring an in-house staff person to do your marketing, but realizing it's out of the budget to bring on someone with the right skills and experience?
If you need an expert to help you with any of the following: social media, graphic design, website design, web hosting, public relations, video production, podcast editing, short form video editing, email marketing, search engine optimization, content marketing, grant writing,
Grand River Agency is here to help you amplify your message and get it in front of the right people. Visit us on the web at grandriver.agency.
Sam, thank you so much for being on the Manlihood Mancast and for coming and visiting in person so that you could be on the show and talk to my friends. I really appreciate you. I appreciate the work you're doing. And if you're listening to this today, guys, and you appreciate Sam's story, make sure that you go to machinegunpreacher.com, check the show notes for that link, and help support the work that Sam is doing. Also, guys, help support the work that Manlihood is doing. Again, we lost our Apple podcast feed and had to redo it, so we lost all of our ratings, all of our reviews, and the listens and subscribers. So I want you to go to Apple Podcasts, follow the Manlihood Mancast, share it with your friends, leave a rating, leave a review, so that we can tell others how much we appreciate what's happening here at Manlihood. If you want to connect with some other men who want to help each other become better men and level each other up, that is something we're doing in the Manlihood Man Cave. So go on Facebook, type in Manlihood Man Cave, and you can send a request to join the group. Guys, I love you. I appreciate you. I appreciate the time that you're taking, investing in manlyhood, and I'm hoping that you're making a difference in the world. Just like Sam did. I know that you can. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Manlihood Mancast. If you want to be a better husband, father, leader, a better man, you need to join our private Facebook group, the Manlihood Man Cave. Join today. Please help us out with a like, comment, share, and subscribe. And check us out at manlihood.com.